A lot of people, they misunderstand what the Illuminati means and what function, what they are, what it means, and where they come from. The word Illuminati is, of course, a Latin word, which means illuminatus, or an enlightened one. And by that, it's actually inferred that it's somebody who's spiritually enlightened, who sees beyond what the mundane world offers. To refer to somebody as an Illuminati isn't necessarily a sinister thing, a bad thing, as most people would assume, because even in a lot of esoteric scriptures, you see Julius Caesar being referred to as an Illuminati, an enlightened one, somebody who's brought a certain enlightenment to the human race. Now, that's not to be confused with the Illuminati, the secret society or the secret Bavarian order that was established in 1776 in Bavaria, which is modern-day Austria, Germany, that region, the Bohemian region. And that was basically a secret order which was established by Adam Weishaupt to agglomerate certain bright minds, economics, psychological, spiritual, mathematical, philosophical minds, to integrate basically this group of individuals that would come together and spiritually enlighten the human race, first through subversive means, and then also to later come into the light. Now, the reason a lot of people speculate that the Illuminati has such a bad name is because, and this is true, secret societies or even fraternal orders aren't necessarily bad. Inherently, they're not bad. The original objective of them was that you have to understand in the 5th, even the 10th century, in the 15th century AD, Rome, or the Vatican, the Pope specifically, had such a tight grip on any kind of spiritual or religious conduct going on that wasn't Christian, that if somebody tried to express any mode of conscious awareness or spiritual dogma other than the Christian faith, they would literally be killed, burned at the stake, tortured to death, and that's why secret societies originally went under. Now, what did happen, and this is why people today think that all secret societies, secret orders, or any kind of Masonic brotherhoods are sinister and evil, is because around the early 1800s, they were in fact infiltrated by certain conspirators to vitiate or undermine their movements and their objectives, and thereby making secret societies look sinister, when in point in fact, they were really, in a lot of respects, they were the liberators of modern society and really giving modern society the freedoms now in terms of, through revolutions, through education, through modern sciences, and even through just giving people general educational knowledge that they otherwise wouldn't be privy to. Well, the 13 families, some people speculate, come from the 13 tribes of Israel, which probably has some validity, but at the same token, if you study the European history and the Western world history, you see that there's a lot of intermingling, a lot of families, a lot of groups intermingling with outsiders, with other parts of the world. Even there's a lot of family intermingling, and because of that, you get literally, a lot of people don't know this, a lot of these kingdoms had children that were mentally retarded. A lot of them had physical disorders, mental disorders, because they would try to keep the lineages within themselves. So literally, first cousin would try to reproduce with first cousin to try to keep it all in the family, as it were, and they had a lot of tragedies. But what that means today, the 13 families, it's an interesting question, because again, you see that number 13 repeated on the back of the dollar bill. You have the 12 steps of the pyramid plus the 13 making the capstone. You have 13 basically, Jesus Christ representing the 13th, which is the physical sun, and then the 12 constellations which revolve around it, which is, Jesus' 12 disciples, and then Jesus being the 13. And this is where really that whole allegory of the 13 families ruling the world come from. What I think they are today, and this is what I tell people all the time, is the kings of Europe that really ruled that entire dominion for the last 2,000 years really didn't go anywhere. And this is pretty much what happened, was that a lot of the principalities or the kingdoms of that time, they really just transmutated through the corporate capitalism endeavor, and they became countries, rather, republics, for people to just assume that kingdoms don't exist, because it gives people more of more of an impression that they actually have a choice and an opportunity, and they basically hid behind the fields of presidencies. So, like countries like France, England, Spain, a lot of people think they've become liberated of kings, when in point in fact that isn't true. They just become countries, and they have presiding officers for those countries, which are called presidents, that the people in true power behind them instill and actually govern, that they do the business they want accordingly. So a lot of these 13 families are still very present. They're wielded, and they most likely dictate a lot of the political, economic, and world affairs of the world today. It's a very significant and unique number, again, even spiritually, referring back to, you know, our physical sun actually being number 13, and then the 12 constellations revolving around, which is, again, the 12. It refers to the allegory of the sun, the 12 constellations, Jesus and the 12 disciples, Hercules and the 12 labors, and then, of course, the 12 months in the year, referring to a more natural phenomenon in that same respect. There are certain things like patterns in astrology, for example, that will influence and in some respects predetermine certain energies acting on the world and therefore on the human race. And that's really the significance of, you know, ancient astrology and even modern astrology for those who understand it, which is what the Magi of ancient Cladia actually played off of, is because certain astrological events will actually dictate what will happen here on Earth. Now, why I'm saying that is because that goes back to the question that you asked, whether it's predetermined or is there any kind of play in it, and yes and no. Predetermined in the respect that humans have will, but it's as free, if you want to call it free, that you can move from A to B. You really can't move to C, but you can move to A to B. The human race has the capacity and the potential to, but historically they don't, you know, through fear, through ignorance, through just blind submission to a certain ruler or whatnot. Is it predetermined? I would say there's obviously, and this has been proven on a number of times, there's definitely an agenda that world leaders want to execute for the human race, and I would say it's a nefarious agenda because they want to basically enslave people and make them their sheep to control as they will. But I don't think that's necessarily predetermined, because if it was predetermined, then there would never be a question of even asking anything about predetermined, because it would already be predetermined and there's no question of even evaluating it. So in other words, the simple answer to that would be that if you can question or imagine a different potential, then obviously it can exist and it can be manifested. I mean, you know, the short version of it is, without going into too much exhaustive historical detail, is that there are indeed very powerful people on this world that want to see a certain something for the human race, and not all of them. I think that there are good people that are very powerful, but for some reason the evil has collaborated in such a fashion that it seems to be trumping temporarily the human race and the world condition. A lot of people speculate doomsday propaganda. I'm more of an optimist, and I blame this whole cataclysm on people, because I think people, through their ignorance, they've let this happen. But in every dark tunnel there's light, and I think because this whole nefarious plot or conspiracy that's been taking over the world will in fact be later what we can identify as the boon for the human race, because it'll force people to look towards something else, towards something new, towards the light, if you will.